Just being me is not enough for that.
You've been so dedicated to your own personal development, have overcome so many challenges. And recently, you're on our stage at Give It All, and you opened up so many amazing loops.
I've tried to become the opposite of my dad, a disconnection from my anger, disconnection as well from my sexuality.
Ask him the questions, which I think takes huge amount of courage.
He started sobbing. Thick tears started coming out of his eyes, and I could feel there was so much tension and constriction in his throat of unexpressed pain and hurt and grief that simply never had a space.
What was your big key takeaway from being coached by such a master?
The 3 or 4 years of bullying that I had, it does not come close to the 15 years or more.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us here on the Reconnected You podcast. For a context for our audience, you've been in coaching, personal development for going on 6 years now, predominantly in men's work, right? And you have the podcast, The Heart of Man. Your coaching program is called The Heart of Man. I love the work that you do, and I want to say thank you so much for everything that it is that you bring through for the healing of the audience and the clients that you work with. Recently, you're on our stage, Give It All, and it brought up a lot of wonderful insights and triggers within me that I know that I need to step into further, and hopefully we're going to touch on some of these aspects here in today's conversation around healing the father wound and sexuality from a man's perspective. And just recently, congratulations for diving into having a coaching session with someone that you have followed along for quite a while now, and it's someone who I deeply appreciate as a coach also. So hopefully we'll have time to jump into that and hear some of your reflections. To kick off the conversation, one of the things that you did bring into Give It All was reference to having an interview, as you put it, with your father after having maybe a bit of a turmoil past and a different relationship statuses with him. I really wanted to understand and dive into the conversation of how it is that you got to the point of asking your father some of these really tough questions that many men don't even have awareness of, and may never even have the courage to go and open up. Where did it start with for yourself?
Totally. Well, the lead up was actually a podcast interview that I did with a fellow men's mentor and as well relationship coach called Nick Warner. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he had referenced the fact on my show that he had done something like this. And he'd as well pointed out to me that very often our parents actually want to have those conversations that we might desire or address the things that might be present. They simply don't know how. They don't have the skills. They don't have the wherewithal. They actually, frankly, need our guidance. And one of the things he as well pointed out to me is that it was really due to the hard work that they've put in that I as well had the opportunities that I had in order to actually do the deep development work that I've as well been a part of for now over a decade. And when he pointed that out to me, there was something in me that, first of all, it triggered something in me that I realized, wow, I've been even though I've done a lot of work on my father, I think there was still an aspect of me that is making my father wrong. And still coming from this righteous place that I've done all this work and I've not sought to really understand him. Like really understand, why is he the way he is? Why has he made the choices that he made? What was he driven by in those moments where I might have felt hurt, where I might have received harm or seen him as well put that onto others? And frankly, it was just for me to have an opportunity to have that deeper conversation with him in the case that he would eventually die. I think that is as well one of the things that I woke up to, the fact that he's aging. And, I see with each year just the growing pains and growing illnesses arising. And yeah, I think one of the things that I've just come to is the fact that the mortality of my father potentially dying is real.
So
It's,
what was your relationship like with your father growing up and up until I would imagine having that conversation fully changed your
yeah,
relationship.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
how talk us through how it
yeah.
has been through
Hmm.
much of your life and how you related to him previously.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things as well that I highlighted in the Give It All speech is the fact that I'd idealized my father growing up. I think that's a very common experience. As children, we can almost deify our parents and make them these godlike figures that don't have those same human flaws that we might have very strongly in those moments. And in some ways as well, parents can reinforce that by not actually showing or presenting their humanness. And especially in my teenage years, that humanness started like really coming to the forefront for me, especially due to the fact that I was born in Germany, but then we ended up moving to Canada as an entire family when I was 10. And now as an adult, I can really intuit and understand, wow, that must have been so challenging for him. Like he didn't speak the language. He, you know, had to do everything that he could to provide for the family. He's a carpenter by trade, and so he had to do and scramble around to make this life work. And I can only imagine the stress that came with that. And obviously, with him not having done any form of emotional work, naturally that leaked out. So what ended up occurring as it relates to my relationship to him is that there was growing tension that was happening. And one of the big things as well that had happened for me is that here as well, I'll as well pick up the session that I had with Peter Crone, where I picked up this belief that I'm not who I'm meant to be, that my father requires me to be someone else other than who I am. And there was something about that, obviously, that was very hurtful and painful because I was looking for his adoration, his recognition, fundamentally his love. And I felt that just being me is not enough for that. And I needed to be so much more than just him. And so, as it relates to my relationship, there's a number of ways it showed up. I mean, like in certain moments of my life, I had more of the appeaser pattern. In certain moments, I had more of the avoidant pattern. Sometimes I had more of the rebellious pattern. And so it showed up in numerous ways for me. And it was right about the age of 21 where, where I'd left Germany for good for over a decade, that things started unraveling especially when I started getting into men's work around 7 years ago, and started looking at like, what does it really mean to be a man, and these themes of masculinity. And one of the core themes is to as well unravel and examine the relationship to one's father. And for me, it was just about acknowledging the hurt that I as well had. So I'll pause here perhaps just for comment, but that I would say was kind of my relationship to him growing up. There's obviously so much more to say in terms of like how I'd unpack that. But
Yeah,
that was
one of the things
fundamentally
that you said on the Give It All stage is rejecting many attributes or many parts of who he is within yourself. Why?
There was so much felt pain that I had, and disappointment and bitterness and resentment towards him for the pain and ways he wasn't seeing me, the ways he wasn't understanding me. Just to be in contact and connection with the things that I saw in him in the absence of any awareness, presence, or consciousness was painful. So what I'm referencing here is the ways he could be very volatile and aggressive and had no ability to contain his sense of anger. I made that mean anger is dangerous. And so as a consequence, I'd fully disconnected myself from this aspect. And I think there was also something in me. One of the things I see as it relates to the father wound is we either seek to model the father, we try to seek his approval and become him because we adore him and we look up to him, or we reject him and we don't want to be like him. in different phases of my life, I had both, but I would say the predominant one has been the rejection of the father. And as a consequence, I've tried to become the opposite of my dad, right? So, I mean, obviously it showed up in all kinds of ways, the disconnection from my anger, disconnection as well from my sexuality, which is as well one of the things that you wanted to address. And that as well caused so much harm in my relationship due to excessive porn use. Like, that wasn't something that I had in control. I had this really deep fear of intimacy because I had been hurt in relationship. And so as a consequence of being hurt in relationship, I was deeply afraid of relationship. I wanted relationship, but I was deeply scared of it. And so one of the ways that I'd sought to get my relational quote unquote needs met was through porn and was through engaging with this imagery, because it would give me, in some ways, at least to my neural patterns, this sense of like being chosen or being connected. Obviously it doesn't last, and there's something very addictive about that, right? And then eventually that moved more towards seeking the validation of women, and as well the constant perception towards acquiring, quote unquote, the sexuality of women, which itself is very dysfunctional and very unhealthy as it expressed itself for me, but also the deep level of dishonesty, like this. And not just in the form of lying. What I'm more referencing is the withholding, the absence of communicating what's really here for me. Like, how would I really I want to express myself? So I feel like I drifted off from your initial question, but yeah, I mean, fundamentally there was so much pain connected to who my father was. Just connecting to any of those qualities that resembled him gave me the fear that I might be like him. And I was trying to reject that.
Yeah. I relate to a lot of what you're saying. Slightly different experience. And I'd love to reflect back to you and see the parts of it, and the next part of this conversation of hopefully where we can go, really relate with that part of not necessarily lying, but admitting or omitting the full truth and not saying what needs to be said. That's been a very big pattern within my past. In relationships, one of my first, most serious relationship, it ended, and she said, "Daniel, I know that honesty is such a big value for you, but not telling the truth, not telling the full story is a form of dishonesty still." And I was like, oh, it's so true. But then I'll even go back as far as thinking like, back when I was 18, 19, 20, like I'd be part of, roadwork crews or whatever. And the boys are like, oh, look at this girl, look at this woman, whatever. And I felt like there's a shame of or embarrassment to not look at the good looking woman walking around and not acknowledge the fact. Like, obviously it was there, it's primal instinct, but I wasn't able to acknowledge it. And so it takes me back to moments of like my father left home when I was 13. He cheated on my mother, which I saw the devastation that causes. So I'd never want to be like him that way. But I didn't necessarily want to reject everything either. And I got to a place where I'm just like, you know what? I think I'm done. Like, he's an acquaintance. It's all good. I see him when I go back to New Zealand. I called him for his birthday and a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, oh, g'day, how you doing? Yeah, good. I'm not retiring yet. He just turned 65. I'm going to keep working. Okay, great. And that's about the extent of it. And I wonder, like, and this is where I'd like to go next with the conversation, is how did that conversation go, or the interview, as you call it, with your father, and what it opened up? Because there's a part of me, and the part of me that says, if that's uncomfortable, it's probably the way.
Right.
To think, holy shit, I wouldn't know how to sit down and have that conversation, and ask him the challenging questions. It's a part of me that goes, well, was it really worth it? What, is there any point in it? What's going to come of that? I feel like it's just going to make him really uncomfortable and me uncomfortable, maybe more him so than me. And I'm like, just let it lie. It's all good. And I'm wondering, is that a voice in my head that's saying, don't open a can of worms that you don't need to?
Well, one of the things I might just want to preface here, if you'd like, I'm very happy to as well provide the questions that I asked my dad and as well my mom. I had the same interview with my mother as well in the show notes. So if listeners or even you would love to have those questions, I'm happy to provide those. And frankly, it was just a structure that I created. But
So just When you say an interview,
Yes.
like, is it like a podcast interview? Is it like an
No.
interrogation? Is it a conversation?
No, it was a
like
conversation.
it's kind of a funny word. Like I wouldn't call it an
Yeah.
interview. Like for me, it would be going just asking the questions
Mm.
that I've always wanted to ask. And
Right.
I went for dinner with my auntie. She came and visited here in Bali. So his younger sister, just like 2 weeks ago, and I asked her. I was like, "So what happened to my dad's father?" And she said, "It's a really sad story. He was 9 or 10, maybe maybe 13." She said, "I don't know. It was about the same age that he left home." For me, was the same time that his father left home, and the way it went, and I never knew this, is he told my father, "All right, we're going to Australia." Dressed him all up in his most beautiful clothes and everything, ready to go. He was so excited, and then on the day that it was time, the time that it was time to go, he just said, "No, I'm just fucking with you," and he left, never came back.
Wow.
And that's how he left. And I'm like, it's so heartbreaking. Like when I was sitting there with Louisa, and Louisa was nearly brought to tears by it. I was sitting there going, fuck, it's so painful. And then to realize that's what my father did to both me and even more so my brother. I'm like, fuck. No wonder, that's what was modeled to him, and he didn't know any better, and he passed it on to us, and we had to suffer that same experience.
Yeah.
And it's so painful. So I guess that would be the conversation, but like, I know the story now. Why go and have the conversation? So yeah, back to your questions.
Just to piggyback on that, I think what it provided me, and I think you're right. What you'd referenced as the questions I've never asked them or dared to ask, I think would probably more an appropriate terming for what I'd explored. I had recorded it. It wasn't like a podcast style. It was just something that I wanted for my own record, something that I could pick up on. And I think one of the things that I consider, and I think this is as well a piece that, Peter as well, Peter Crone, I learned a lot from him. So often we're actually not in a relationship to the person in front of us, but rather our view of the person, if that makes sense, right? So our own assumptions, conclusions, projections, associations, interpretations, meanings that we have created based on the experience that we've had with that person. It's like, maybe growing up, the father was dishonest or wouldn't share that. And so we have this natural association or conclusion that he's a liar, right? And so rather than actually seeing who is dad now, I still see him through that framing of liar, right? And so that was one of the ways that I had sought to really look at my dad and look at my parents, frankly, through fresh eyes. I really just wanted to see him. And I think the thing that really stood out for me was how much he was so engaged in sharing and wanting to speak. And I could really feel, wow, here's someone who really wants to be heard. Someone who really wants to be listened to, but never actually gets the chance, as well from his own son, right? And I think that was something that massively stood out for me. That was one of the first things. To have a deeper understanding to the bigger picture of his life and what was occurring, it filled out the picture for me, where it wasn't just, okay, like, here's this traumatic experience that you had, and as a consequence now I'm like, quote unquote, understand you. For me, it was a deeper opportunity to have a richer, deeper look into who is this person actually. And that is really what I had attempted to acquire through that conversation. And one of the things as well that really stood out for me, that I'd attempted to share and give it all before, let's just say, the timer went off, is the fact that the moment where things really came into place for me is where I asked him about his most difficult experiences of life. And when he shared about his own father's passing due to a car accident, unexpected car accident with a drunk driver, He was 17 at the time. He was just about to step into the army. From my understanding, he actually was already getting initiated into the army. And then he heard about that experience. And when he was sharing about that experience, he started sobbing. He started, like, just thick tears started coming out of his eyes. And I could feel there was so much tension and constriction in his throat of unexpressed pain and hurt and grief that simply never had a space, simply never had an opportunity. And there's something in me when I saw that and when I witnessed that and when I felt that, especially as well with the line of work that I do, working specifically with such textures as well with clients. There was something in me as well that really shifted in that moment. I would say there's two main things that really shifted for me. First of all, I didn't feel the need to be parented by my dad anymore. I think that was the second thing that I really got from leading these questions. I think naturally between the roles, it's very difficult, as I would say, to, in a way, step out of these archetypes that we as well have in our families. To your parents, you're always going to be their son, right? Like, one of the things that my mom actually was projecting onto me until about 6 years ago, which I really disliked, and then I eventually had to communicate a very strong boundary towards it, is her reference that you're always going to be my little boy, right? So there's something in that texture where I could see she's not willing for her own son to grow up. And I had really communicated a clear boundary to her, referencing, I'm an adult now, I'm a man now, right? And I do not want to be referenced as such, right? But what that conversation or what that example illuminates for me is the fact that we can get stuck in these archetypes, right? Child, parent. And so even as, being a son of my father, I can still have that projection of, he's not, like, his actual name is Valdemar, or Vladimir in English. I don't have that association of him in his name, but more as dad. And within that, I as well bring on top of that all my interpretations of what that means, of how a father should be, and how he should act, how he should speak, how he should be. And so when he doesn't live up to that title, dad, I get resentful, right? And that kind of keeps me away from the type of relationship that I can have with him. And I noticed how subtly I was still trying or attempting for him to father me. There's something in that experience of him just showing his humanity that made me realize, wow, this is just us coming together, two men, right? Two adults coming together, him sharing his pain, similar to the way that I do with my friends and similar to the way that my friends do with me. And we just get to be here with each other. There was something about that was so beautiful for me. But I think there's also something to add just on your question. I think there's a big distinction between cognitive understanding of what a father has gone through and feeling it on an embodied level. I understood that my dad was in pain due to the experiences that he had, but he'd never shown it in that way. He's never shown his humanity in this way. And so him showing his humanity and me receiving it in that moment from a place of what I would attempted to bring a space of love and non-judgment, it actually brought us more closely together. Right now, I'm going to give the caveat. Obviously, this might not be the case with everyone who might try to lead such an interview, right? But I think if we can lead from that place of non-judgment and love and acceptance and just seek to understand and assure to the individual in front of them, in front of us, that we're not here to judge them. We're here to create a safe space for them. I think it offers a lot more opportunity than we might think.
If you're finding value in this story, I'd love to invite you to hit the subscribe button below. You'll be the first to receive content just like this, honest, relevant, and here to support you on your journey. With every like and every follow, together we're succeeding in our mission and reconnecting the world with what matters most. And that is, of course, each other. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. massive story, massive experience. You mentioned that your father really broke down and through that experience. Had you ever seen your father cry before that?
I have, but it generally was when I had done something that, you know, he perceived as wrong. Moments of tension and conflict, frankly, it never landed in the moments when he had brought it, because there was something about it where he was almost blaming and shaming me for the way I was being such an ungrateful son. So there was a lot of blame and shame connected to his tears. Um, but I think there was something very genuine and very sincere about his tears in that moment. And I think the thing that I've always seen about my dad, but didn't come across as well in my younger years, is the fact that he's always been a very sensitive soul, but he's never had an opportunity to actually work with that, especially as well as a man, coming as well from a Eastern European background.
I
I mean,
can
that
imagine.
completely taboo, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he was shut down for many years.
I think that would be one of the discomforts for myself. Like, I've never seen my father express any kind of emotions apart from the time when the annoying lawnmower wouldn't start for the 10th time, so he took to it with an axe and then run it full speed into the brick wall. That's about the extent of the emotions that I saw from a male role model in my life.
Right.
I think one of the discomforts for me to go into a conversation like that is, I imagine with my ability now to sit with discomfort, ask the questions that I can, and have been through that process with many clients, is I'd probably see some level of emotion. And honestly, I think I'm terrified of seeing that from my father, because I've never seen it, apart from that one time with the axe. I mean, he's not going to take to me with an axe, but like, I'm not sure I'm prepared or capable of sitting with that, or like, that frightens me.
May I ask what's so scary about that?
Maybe it's just the unknown of it. Maybe is that the people pleaser in me that's like, I don't want to go and inflict that discomfort onto someone else. Like, I feel like I'm protecting him from his own suppressed sadness and grief and healing. But then there's another part of me that goes, well, isn't that service? Am I, if I can, shouldn't I? I must. Isn't that part of his journey? And isn't that what I've been trained to do as a coach? And then there's another part of me that goes, well, he's not asking for it. Why doesn't he take responsibility? If he wants it, he should initiate it. So there's so many different parts of me that's going like, and this is why I haven't initiated. I'm like, it's hard, it's uncomfortable, no one's asked for it. Why open up the can of worms that I don't know what's going to happen with them? What's the point, kind of thing? And then there's I'd kind of said to myself that I was going to do it last time I was in New Zealand, which is 2 years ago. And there was moments where I could have, but I was like, I'll just enjoy the moment for what it is, which is pretty surface and shallow. So I'm wondering, for yourself, going and initiating this, what kinds of discomforts came up for you, and how did you go about it? Like, it sounds like you recorded it, so it's obviously it was a container that you created. Or talk me through that process.
Well, may I just comment on what you just
Sure,
said?
yeah, please.
I think what's really helped me as well with that is just really meditating on his coming death, and really considering for myself, if this were to happen tomorrow, if this were to happen in a year from now, would I be satisfied with the relationship that we've had? Would there be regrets? And I think before I had that interview with him, there was, because to me, I wasn't living as integrity is my highest value. And I wasn't, in my eyes, living as a demonstration of the type of man that I seek to consistently embody and be in my life. One of the things I just want to comment is that your light just turned off on the other side. You want to just continue?
So be it.
Great.
The battery probably went flat.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that had really supported me and clarified for me that this is something that I really want to do. Because I don't believe I could have lived with the regret of the fact, that I hadn't given it my all during the time that he was there with me. So I think that was a really big thing. As it relates to the process and how I'd as well moved through that, there was definitely a lot of avoidance initially. I considered that I was back home for a 2-week period. So it was a bit of an extended period of time. And generally, right now, my natural disposition is a general sense of avoidance, right? To not go into the depth of closeness that even my parents are now starting to seek with me, obviously, because their son lives on the other side of the world. And I'd shared with them already from the beginning of my trip that I wanted to have this conversation. They were both very confused about it, confused about me asking for it.
So
but I think,
what did you ask for specifically?
I don't actually remember, but I think it was something along the lines of wanting to ask them the questions that I felt like I still needed answered. And I want to understand their life a little bit better. I think one of the things that I really struggled with is the fact that I don't know them that well. I don't know their history that well. I don't really know what were their dreams. What were their hopes? What were their wishes? What were their letdowns? What are the things that they've really learned about life? There's a lot of wisdom there, man. And I think I got to access that. And one of the things as well that I picked up on that was an added benefit is through the weeds of the conversation, there was things that I started pointing out, certain traits and certain aspects of their personality where I was like, oh, wow, I got that from my mom. Oh, I got that from my dad. And there was something in that. For me, there was a reclamation and almost an appreciation of the parts in me that live inside of me due to this inextricable bond that I have with my parents, right? And so there was something in me embracing those aspects in them that I got to embrace myself more deeply. I think there is, and I can't explain it further than that, but there seems to be a very inextricable link with our parents in that way, that the more we learn to fall in love or come into acceptance with them as they are, that as well reflects itself on our relationship to self. But yeah, as I shared, there was quite a bit of avoidance, and I literally waited out until the last day, I think.
Wow.
And I was just like, fuck it, I just leaned into it and just went into the deep waters. I've been in that situation many times around resistance, and there's no way other than just through, right?
Yeah.
And so I just pulled myself through it, man. I was just like, I'd referenced the fact that I was going to do it. I'd as well shared it with friends, so they were holding me accountable.
I love that.
So there was no going back, man. I needed to do it.
I feel like this conversation's already bringing me accountability to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And do you think it was important to have done it in person via over a Zoom call or a video call that would have been easy to record?
It's a great question. I think through video would as well work. I think that is definitely a possibility. So if someone were to hesitate because they're not in one's physical presence, I wouldn't say that this is something that I would want someone to get in the way of that. But obviously there is something to say about the added layer, the added depth to being in person. I mean, like you might know that as well with, just doing this physical interview here together right now is a very different form of interview than having it being virtual. And I do both very intimately and very deeply. And you can go into far lengths with something virtual, but there is an added element to the personal touch of it.
Yeah, that would be one of the things that I'm like, I'll wait until I go and visit in New Zealand next. And there's a part of me that goes, oh, that's reasonable. Yeah. Sit there and you can hug it out at the end or whatever it comes up, be there in person. But then there's a part of me that goes, it's bullshit. If you're going to do it, like anything can happen between now and then, whenever it is that I head home again. So I thank you so much for sharing, because it's bringing up a whole lot of things within me that I'm like, okay, I got to go and explore this. I know, and it's such a wonderful learning through all aspects of life. Like we just went on a hike through the Indonesian rainforest with a bunch of brothers, and I think we all struggled in different ways. The challenges that arise, and more of them were mental than they were physical. It was a hard hike, man. My calves are still burning. But it's those mental challenges and the exploration of self and what it is that we can handle. But it's always worth it, isn't it?
It is.
You know, like in the moment, whenever I was like, "Fuck you, Francois! Why are you taking us up here? This is so hard." And he was getting joy from the suffering. I was up there with him, and he's like, "This is what I do it for." It's so good watching, like testing how far it is that guys can go before they break, before getting to the the trauma zone, seeing the breakdown. But then at the end of it, there's an immense sense of pride. And so whether it's the physical or the mental, or in this case, I think a lot of it is the emotional. For me, at least, to go and explore, well, what will come up in someone else, and for me to hold that space and then hold that space within myself. I've never done that before. But whatever can come of it is me discovering that I'm capable of doing that. And that's another area that has been explored.
I think there's just such a great opportunity in putting ourselves into such situations, whether it's, having such a conversation with a parent, or, putting ourselves through the arduous, journey that we'd as well gone through. And, I'd as well come up against my own demons and recognized, oh shit, like I have some very controlling tendencies, and I have very strong preferences in terms of the way I want things to be. And when I'm out of that, I can get dysregulated. I can get discombobulated. And I definitely got met up against the fact that I don't like being in the jungle in the way that we were. And there was something really difficult about that. But there was an immense learning about that. I think the thing is that so often, many individuals, whether it's conscious or unconscious, we keep ourselves in these nice little boxes where our humanness actually doesn't have to be touched. In that experience that we had just gone through, that trek, I definitely was out of my window. I was definitely out of my little box, and my humanness started coming through. And then there was a moment where, especially towards the end, where I was just slipping and sliding, and I fell down probably like 15 times. I was getting really grumpy. And I just shared with Matt, I'm so grumpy. And I started realizing, I really don't like this grumpy Alex. I judge the fuck out of him. So what that experience gave me an opportunity to do is see grumpy Alex and actually find a little bit more acceptance for him. So I think this is what these opportunities always give us. They give us a deeper excavation of our humanness, and through seeing and witnessing our humanness, we can actually come into a deeper sense of acceptance and love for it.
And there's so many parts of ourselves to explore that
Totally.
often, for many people that never go into this work, will never discover those aspects of self. I think it's a wonderful discovery and pathway, as you say, for self-acceptance. So the next part of the conversation I'd love to dive into is the sexual part.
Let's go.
You lead the way, because I've got no idea about this conversation. I've got a few friends that are deep into Tantra and sexuality, and every time we have a conversation, they can go way further in the conversation than I can before I start going, oh, okay. Or like there was one guy that his whole job is basically having threesomes, foursomes with women, and there's like the 14-year-old, 16-year-old boy that's sitting there giggling, going, wow, this is most guys' dream. Wow. They love that. But he's like, well, this is just my job, and giving pleasure to women. And, and it's in a very respectful, kind of more spiritual way than, like prostitution. It's not that. And I was getting to ask him all sorts of questions that just blew my mind. And I was sitting there like, I could just feel this boy and be giggling away. It felt so immature, but it was so funny. And he could just sit there with a straight face and talk about it all. But I'd love to hear your experience, because you mentioned, again, at Give It All, you mentioned like tantric work and BDSM and all these kinds of things. What did you learn about yourself through this experience? How did it start? I don't know, open canvas for you, man.
So much, man. I mean, I might just want to preface the fact that I'd never intended to go down that path. It wasn't so much of an interest. what made it an interest for me was just the painful experiences that I had and just the wounds that I experienced around my sexuality. I'd never shared this on air, but I um, had lost my virginity a lot later than a lot of guys might deem as acceptable. I'd lost it in my young 20s. And so there was something about it that was very shameful for me, especially within as well the environment and the subgroup that I as well grew up in, because there was this association that as a man, you are more valuable, you are more masculine, you are more male if women like you, if you can acquire women, if you can have sex with women. And so there was this deep tie and deep kink related to my sense of self-worth and sexuality, right? It's a deep distortion, and a big distortion that a lot of men carry, right? And so what got me down that path was frankly a relationship breaking down. This was almost 5 years ago by now. That kind of initiated me on my Bali path. And that breakdown was so painful because I completely lost myself in that relationship. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know what was real anymore. I didn't know what was left, what was right, what was up, what was down. And there was a few things that were really deeply present for me. One of the things is that I knew how to connect with myself. I was already a coach at the time. I was doing a lot of yogic work, meditative work. I was already a breath worker at the time. I knew how to do all of that. But in relationship, all of that went out of the window. And I had to actually learn, how can I actually engage in relationship? And for me, there was something that clarified, that said, I never want to be in that situation again. And that got me down the path of Tantra, right? And included with that is obviously as well understandings of sexuality, right? And so it was more of a sidestep because I wanted to as well understand relationships a lot more deeply. And a huge component of that was sexuality. And I would as well reference myself as someone who has a lot of sexual life force and is very connected to that. And I've always experienced my sexuality as very intense, but I'd never learned or never discovered how to actually harness it, how to contain it, how to cultivate it, how to be with it, right? And which is also why I had used masturbation and porn to leak it out, because I didn't know how to actually be with the intensity of it, right? And so for me, my journey around sexuality was just, first of all, understanding my conditioning, understanding the wounds that I've experienced around sexuality, all the distortions that I've created. Like, as I shared, to be masculine, to be worthy as a man, I need to constantly have sex, and women always need to be with me. That's a big distortion. I needed to cut myself off from all of that and come into right relationship with myself again, come into right relationship with these aspects of myself that I had sought to avoid through sexuality. Because that was as well one of the kinks that I had, that whenever there was emotions that I didn't want to feel, I would use sexuality in a way to bypass that, right? So again, it just created challenges naturally in a relationship, right? Because, the partners in front of me could almost feel that there's something in me that is pulling at them in a way that is not just about sex. There's something else there that is also about me seeking to avoid. And there's been a number of experiences where the spark faded away, and that was a really difficult experience for me, let's just say. And there was certain moments where the safety and trust eroded, where it was like, that was really painful for me, because it was one of the ways that I would argue as well, due to my tantric teachings, I've as well come to discover is, let me backtrack. One of the things that I've really come to love about the path of Tantra is, what I want to reference here is the fact that I've always been very spiritually inclined, right? Due to my meditative practice, yogic practice. So Tantra was an extension of that. And I've come to discover that I could access the divine or, deeper forms of consciousness through sex, right? And through different teachers and through different practices, through different mediums of exploring that, I actually came into a deeper connection to myself and almost a sense of dissolving of the self, if that makes sense, through connection with another person, right? So for me, when I started experiencing that, and when I started experiencing, because like as well, what can happen in tantra containers or retreats or workshops is that you are led into partner practices, even with people that you're not attracted to at all, right? And to recognize and consider that I can experience deep intimacy, what I reference here as closeness, deep closeness with people that I have no physical attraction to, that might be 20, 30 years my senior, and to feel that that is possible, I mean, that just blew my fucking mind. And there was something about that that was very addictive and hooked me and made me realize, wow, like I've been sitting on a meditation cushion trying to access deeper states of consciousness, not realizing I can actually do that in a relationship to another woman, right? And there was something about that for me that just unlocked and made me realize there's something really beautiful about that. Last thing I'll say to that, which I think is growing as an extension or expression of my purpose, I consider the fact that, like I said, I've always been very connected to this intense sexual life force that I've had, but I've had deep shame for it. So sexual shame is something that I deeply struggled with. And I would argue it's probably present, if I were to just to take the data of the individuals I speak with and clients I've worked with, 9 out of 10 times. Like I really consider that there is some form of component of sexual shame present in a man. Obviously, there's gradients to that, right? There can be like full-blown shame. And for some individuals, it's just, just slight expressions of that. And it could be shame towards their genitals. It could be shame towards their desires. It could be shame towards even having desires or even having urges. So for me, sexual work or sexual practice was as well a gateway for me to release a lot of the internalized shame that I had of myself, so I can come into deeper acceptance and love of self, right? And so for me, it was just a medium, and it was just a vehicle and a gateway. And due to the deep healing that I've experienced through releasing a lot of that shame, I feel very motivated to now as well support other men on releasing that sexual shame. Not so much that, they now feel so liberated in their sexuality, but because I know to release that sense of shame, there's going to be deeper acceptance for themselves. And it will as well lead to deeper harmony in self and as well in their relationships. And there's something very meaningful in that for me. So, I mean, I can continue here, but I'll pause here for comment or questions.
I'd love to ask questions on that. There was a few major things that were coming up. I'm resonating with a lot of what you're sharing. Where do I start with that? The first thing is, I don't necessarily relate to it in a form of shame. Maybe it is the case because when we talk about sexuality, for me it's a form of self-expression, and so I think maybe there's a bigger picture at play for myself. Is creativity is a form of self-expression. I've always kind of claimed that I'm not creative. It's bullshit because I can open the fridge, have a look. Louise will say, there's nothing in the fridge, there's nothing to eat. I'll pull out all the ingredients and make this beautiful meal. And she's like, well, where'd that come from? And that's creativity, right? Yeah. And I love it. That's a self-expression. Totally. But, in the natural senses or the more stereotypical senses of self-expression, singing, I can't think of, I don't know what would be worse for me to do, stand-up comedy or singing. Probably singing would be worse. Like dancing, I just feel like, I don't know whether I feel so awkward that my brain tells me I don't like it, or if I've tried and I've never really liked it. I kind of feel like I'm just there with my dick out in public, looking like an idiot, going, it's just not fun. There's been odd times where there's been fun, but it's just not my form of self-expression. And then it's the same coming back to sexuality. It's going, well, if you ask me what my preferences are, I'm like, I don't really know. I don't have any preferences. I'm pretty easygoing. When women ask that, They don't want to hear that answer. That's not a masculine response. That's not taking ownership. That's not leading in the bedroom. So I'm like, well, so what, do I have to pretend like I want something? I've toyed with some of the different things, talked to some male friends about, like, who are really good in sex and know what women like or whatever, and get some advice from them, follow them, and then it turns out the woman like, that was fucking weird. Because it doesn't feel right? Because it probably feels like a performance. So I'm putting it on. Oh yeah, women love it rough. Okay, give it to her rough, and then oh, yeah, I didn't like that. And so it's like the sense of self-expression. I'm like, well, so is that true? I don't have a preference, or does it come back to that shame, a deep shame that I don't know how to express that? And then I go back to what we're talking about. Male demonstration. Well, my father wasn't expressive, so he didn't teach me how to be expressive as a man. Yeah. So maybe I don't know. I just don't know what it is that I don't know. Thoughts, guidance, insights. Absolutely. I can't imagine I'm the only one with this experience.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But I've got no idea where to go from there.
Yeah. So something that comes up for me on that point that you had just made is the fact that I hear that, first of all, as commonplace for a lot of men. And second thing is, I had an interview with an individual called Justin Patrick Pierce. He's an intimacy mentor as well. And he wrote this incredible book called Playing with Fire with his partner. I can really recommend the read. I've done it a few times. And within that, he has as well a number of intimacy, quote unquote, practices, right, that you can as well examine with a partner, but as well our self practices. And the one that he illuminated for me in that interview that I'd done, which I'm happy to send as a link to the show notes, is a practice called the I want practice, right? And one of the things as well he had referenced is similar to, you taking all the ingredients from the fridge. Sexuality and our desire is infinitely creative, right? And I think one of the things is that individuals, maybe due to conditioning of porn or whatever, right, because they're so numb within themselves, not saying that this is the case for you, they are not very inherently connected to that desire in them. And so one of the things he had guided into, which is a deep practice that I've explored within myself now for quite a while, and as well I'm now offering clients, is a practice he references as the I want practice, right? So you can kind of imagine yourself sitting on a meditation cushion, closing down your eyes, visualizing your partner, or, if you're single, like the dream individual that you would want to be with, and starting with the sentence prompt, I want, right? And just noticing what arises as it relates to certain desires that you might have in terms of what you would like her to do, right? So it could be something like, I want you to get on your hands and knees, and I want you to slowly start crawling towards me. Now I want you to turn around and stretch your ass to the sky and just gently look back towards me again. So this is just a play towards reflecting the prompt, I want, and just noticing what arises for you. Initially, it might feel very clunky. It might feel awkward. It might feel weird. You might not feel very connected to that. That can often be as an extension of some of the conditioning that we might have received as men, that I'm not supposed to have desires. I'm not supposed to have needs. I'm supposed to always have the answer, I'm fine. I don't need anything, right? That can often as well be a bit of a protective mask, right? So I think sometimes as well, there needs to be a bit of a rewiring for men that I can have needs, I can have desires. And I think one of the things as well that I really like about sexuality, so that is the practice, but I see it as an expression and form of play. And I don't know about you, but one of the things I can say about my life is that I don't have enough play, and I want to have more play in my life, right? And so one of the things that I consider about sex is not just the fact it's about two bodies rubbing off of each other just to, get off. There's something about it where there's something magical about it, I would assert, where it's like two humans come together, literally naked, but also not just beyond the physical component, we get to be seen in a way that no one else sees us, right? In the humanness. And there's something so incredible about that. There's something so beautiful about that. There's something so intimate about that. And I cherish that so deeply. And the form of play that can arise if we allow a space or curate a space for that, where we just get to design the experience we want to have. I think there's something very thrilling about that. And I think that's also one of the things that pulled me towards BDSM, which is, to me, it's kind of an extension of theater play. You know, like one of the teachers that I worked with, his name is Amrapani. He has like literally a form, a contract that he requires his doms and subs, which are the archetypes that they work with, to fill out before they do a scene, which is what is referenced, right? And there you really reference and cross, this is where I want to be touched. This is where I don't want to be touched. These are the things that I want done. These are the things I don't want done. These are the instruments that I want maybe to be included. And these are the things that I don't want included. So it's a very clear consensual contract. And then from there, you have that in mind, and then you just create. Mm-hmm. You create in the moment, and it's play, right? And there's something about that I find very exhilarating, especially as a guy who lives a very serious life, man. I need a little bit of fun. I need a bit of play. And so, yeah, I think that's what I'll say to that.
So good, man. So good listening to all of this. There were so many different images that were coming up, but like potentiality as well. I think there's a lot of a requirement to like what is the word? Just like permission. You're quite right. One of the things that Louise and I have talked about is we want to just hang out with more people that are having fun. Like fun is something that we live here in Bali. We've got everything that it is that we want. Life is amazing. We've got, everything's working out, but it seems like we're surrounded by people that are so serious as well. Like they're hustling, they're grinding, they're trying to make their next amount of money per month, or grinding away. I'm like, man, what happened to just having fun? And we've been looking at it through the lens of going and having fun with others. That's part of the reason why we moved back here after traveling for so long. Yeah. But even what I'm hearing now is having that fun, having that play within our relationship between the two of us. So one of the things that we started doing is bringing board games out, doing that kind of thing.
I love that.
But, like having fun, it just reminded me of somewhere that we went and stayed. It was up in the mountains here in Bali, and we had our own little private cabin, and just bringing these elements of just hanging out naked, drinking tea and throwing cookies at each other and all of that kind of thing. Like, I guess that could easily bring in some, like, whether it's BDSM things or whether it's just having that play. I'm like, I think what you've shared is a version of creativity that I haven't even considered. So thank you for sharing that. I think I got to bring that more into my life.
I think as well, something that I just want to add is, I lost my point. So yeah.
Okay, I've got one more question for you.
Got it.
Is when it comes to doing tantric type practices and exercise, you reference both doing it personally and with a partner.
Yeah.
Do you have guidance around or suggestions around, if you've got a partner, well, then you've got to do it with your partner? Is it appropriate to go and do it solo with other people? Because that seems like there might be a bit of a conflict in interest there. Or doing it just solely by yourself with no one else, the distinctions of how to maybe approach that's for the benefit of the connection with self and the connection with the partner, if you have one. Yeah. How do you, what's a great line of introduction, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's important that if one is in a relationship, that this is entered in a consensual manner. And this is something that is like completely disclosed. And I've when I was deep down that tantric path, I was single, so at the time that wasn't so much of a concern that I had, and then I entered as well a relationship, and I practiced with her, but then we were both in that realm very intimately, and there was certain workshops or retreats where she wasn't present, but due to the fact that she was so deeply connected to the work, she understood the fact that, first of all, these are energetic practices, in the sense that, obviously this is not people like taking off their clothes and getting like deeply into the, explicit acts of sexuality. These are more energetic textures where we're actually exploring elements of desire or expressions of deeper closeness, right? And so sometimes partner practices, even with another person, can excavate or evoke a deeper opportunity for closeness with our partners. So I've seen that as well many times in retreats and workshop spaces, that even the individuals in couples, they agree to the fact to partner with other individuals. So if I want to make clear, I'm not ushering people to doing that. It's something that has to be addressed. It's something that has to be examined. Why do you want to do that? What's the reason for you doing that? I think there is, obviously, like as of now, I wouldn't want that environment anymore. I would be a whole lot more interested in engaging and creating such spaces with my partner. But fundamentally, I mean, I don't know if I'm like really being precise with my answer to the question, but fundamentally, relationship to me is really about just having very clear and honest conversations about the things that are arising for us, and creating a space for that, a permission field, right? Like I love the word permission that you brought in, and in the absence of addressing such things, I think this is where the stickiness occurs for so many people.
Something I notice in coaching is oftentimes it can be easier to share a truth or an undiscovered part of yourself with strangers as opposed to with friends or family or people that know you. It seems like, and it seems a bit of a paradox. It seems strange that we're more, but in total sense as well, that we're more afraid of the judgment from the people that we really love and care about than people that we don't know. And maybe that was the point of my question, is like some of this work, especially when it comes to sexuality, which again seems totally off. I'd feel maybe more comfortable exploring those undiscovered parts of myself with a totally different group or set of people than with my partner that I'm supposed to be the most intimate with.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of a tension or a tear within that, and to go, well, how do we navigate that? But then again, isn't that the whole point, is the vulnerability with my partner that will then essentially bring the relationship closer together. And so it's that discomfort of, well, maybe it's not choosing the easier road with strangers, it's just doing it where it matters most.
I would as well assert that this is also one of the reasons why a lot of individuals engage with infidelity, because they don't perceive that they can bring all of themselves into the relationship. And to your point, there's so much significance to being accepted and loved. And so if I were to share this part, this is why I as well love this idea of exploring taboo like practices or desires or fantasies, not to necessarily engage in them, but just to create a permission field for those. Now, if we don't feel like there's space for such things in our sex life or our relationship, there is something within our psyche that will seek to find some other access point to exert those desires out. I don't know if you've ever heard of this term, the Madonna whore complex. Ever heard of that?
No.
It's deeply linked to the mother wound fundamentally, but there can be a bit of a kink with some guys where there can be a bit of this association of seeing the purity of a woman due to his relationship to his mother, and as a consequence he's not able to exercise some of his deeper and darker and more primal desires with his partner of choice, and as a consequence he needs to go out and leak it out through infidelity and that expression. So I would assert, just to the point that I wanted to make, that infidelity can often be an extension due to the fact that we don't feel like we can bring all of ourselves into the relationship, right? And so there's great opportunity for closeness and, us feeling more satisfied and fulfilled, and like our needs are welcome and there's a permission field for them if we actually create a space for such conversations.
Beautiful. I love that. Going to have to wrap up in just a moment. I really want to touch on and say congratulations, having a coaching session with Peter Crone, someone I'm a huge fan of, and I know that you have been following his work and learning a lot from him as well. I'd love to give you the opportunity to touch on what was your big key takeaway from being coached by such a master in the way that he does.
Yeah.
Big takeaway that's been integrating with you since having that conversation with him.
Yeah. Well,
And I think episode coming out soon, right?
I believe so. I would imagine so. I'm not exactly sure around the details, but my guess would probably be in the next 4 to 6 weeks it'll be coming out. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it was such an honor, and I consider the fact that I discovered his work right about the time when I started my own coaching business, and he just blew my mind, man. I was just like, wow, like this is possible. This is what you can do, and this is how you can help people. And there was something about that where I was like, fuck, okay, this is like my North Star in terms of like the skill level and the expertise that I want to accomplish and ascertain in my life, right? And so to receive that opportunity was a great honor for me. What I'd picked up on, which was fundamentally as well the thing that he had pointed out to me, is two things. So obviously the prison that he kind of highlighted to me was that I was living in this world that I'm not who I'm meant to be. So there was this constant rejection of myself, that I'm not okay as I am, due to as well the relationship that I've had with my father, which we as well discussed at the beginning stage of our conversation. And as a consequence of constantly perceiving that I'm not who I'm meant to be, that as well extended itself over to my relationship to life. If I'm not who I'm meant to be, I'm also not where I'm meant to be. And so I mean, that was probably the bigger one for me, where I was just like, this is why I feel like such resistance to life. I feel like life is not on my side. I constantly feel like a victim. I constantly feel like it's up to me. And like life just felt like an uphill battle that I just couldn't win. So there was a deep reclamation within that distinction and that recognition that it's not just a rejection of myself, which, you know, I was not necessarily foreign to, but it was also due to the rejection of self, was also my constant resistance to where I am. And so just to sit with that distinction, right? And I think what's so unique about his work is it's just about awareness, right? It's just about unveiling. It's almost like pulling off the curtain so you actually see what's real and what's true. And then it's just about returning back to that awareness, right? So even at Give It All, I was practicing that. I mean, that was the biggest talk I held for like ever, you know. I mean, I don't know how many people there were, like 80 to 100, my guess.
Yeah, close to 80.
I've held speeches before, but to, you know, like multiple dozens of people, but that was the biggest speech. And then I was so anxious. And then I was realizing, the reason why I'm so anxious is because I'm not creating a permission field for that anxiety and this fear to be here. I'm projecting I should be someone else. I should be confident right now. I should be composed. I should be contained. Fuck me. I've never done this before. Yeah. Of course I'm going to be scared, right? And so even within that, I was just practicing. Like, I'm exactly who I'm meant to be, and I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. This experience I'm having right now is okay. And yeah, man, I mean, that's something that I've been ongoingly practicing. And one of the final things as well as say is that we'd referenced as well off air is the fact that, you know, I'd as well highlighted to him that I'd been bullied in my teenage years, and it had a massive impact on me. And that I would as well say it intensified the experience I had with my dad. And the thing that he highlighted to me is the fact that in proportion to the 3 or 4 years of bullying that I had, it does not come close to the 15 or years or more of abuse that I've as well exerted towards myself through consistently self-rejecting myself and resisting myself. And there's something very, very humbling with that. I mean, I'd taken that in. There's been numerous moments where I just sat with that understanding and tears just came to my eyes around the fact that I'd treated myself in these ways. So yeah, I just want to assert to the potency of this work, and it was incredibly transformative.
That last line when he said that the bullying that you had, and whichever way he said the bullying that you had as a child, and not to diminish any of that, is nothing on the bullying that, like, what you've been giving yourself. I think what must have been one of the strongest lines of the whole recording. Right at the end, I was like, fuck. And I totally feel it myself, because I think to a more or lesser degree, we all have some form of self-judgment or some self-rejection.
Yeah.
I totally resonate with that myself, and not who I need to. Because I say it from a place of coaching, and like I'm always I really want to become the person that can have that. I'm always becoming someone, and I think it's great to have that ambition. But through that ambition, it's like I neglect to really consider who it is that I am today. And I'm enough right here.
That's it.
And that connection, I had never really made the conscious connection of going, well, if I'm the presupposition I'm not enough here today, well, then the life that I'm living is not enough here in this moment. But all we have is the moments of now. So I'm never going to be okay. Fuck. That's a really hard pill to swallow. That's a really deep truth to be aware of. And I think having the awareness of that is a really great starting point, because now it gives us choice to start observing, believing, noticing different things, start talking to ourselves differently, taking different actions, and like just the fine tweaks on our reality changes so much. It has the ripple effect, right? What have you noticed now, like through having that over the last, it's been a few weeks now, have you noticed, is there a practice that you bring into it? Is there an intentional practice or observation that you bring so you can keep reinstalling that and bringing it back to that truth of being amazing with who it is that you are right now in this moment and all the moments?
It's just an ongoing practice of bringing that awareness back of what he had pointed out to me. And the moments I practice that is when I'm in a place of trigger or resistance, and I examine. And this is, I would assert, as well, been a practice prior. So it's by now pretty much second nature. But for me, it was about examining and highlighting, well, why am I so triggered right now? Like, why am I so pissed off? What is it about this experience that I'm having here right now that is not okay? And in those moments, I track back, oh, okay, where is that prison that he had highlighted existing in this very moment? And if that were to be the case, because there's also other prisons, obviously, I pause. I just close down my eyes. I breathe. And I just give myself that sense of acknowledgement, that sense of acceptance, right? Because I'm not who I'm meant to be is a strategy, right? Of the high achiever and the performer for so many of us, and including as well myself. And it's a strategy to get the love that I perceived I never had, or the due to the pain of the judgment that I had felt, especially from my father, right? So what I'm attempting to acquire by becoming who I think I should be is love. So the practice is providing myself the very love that I'm seeking to get in the future in this very moment. So if there's a practice, it's that.
I love that. It ties back to so many of my favorite practices around self-acknowledgements. I think it's such a simple thing, but it's a game changer. Yeah. So many of us, I think we're all, until we become conscious of it, trying to seek the validation or the love or the acceptance or the belonging or all of it out there. But it's like, well, until we can give it to ourselves in here, it's not going to come from out there.
Totally.
And at least if it does, then it's going to be an empty version of it. And so to come back to that, I think it's just such a wonderful reminder. Alex, thank you so much for sharing everything. We could continue for the next 3 hours. I've got so many things that I wanted to touch on that we didn't touch on, but I think we touched on so many beautiful things. You've given me some wonderful perspectives. I think I have some own personal accountabilities that you've given me now that I'm going to go and pursue, explore, bring to life. And so the ripple effect that you've already had on me through the work that you've done for yourself is going to be transformative, and also the continued ripple effect that you have on all the people that you work with. So thank you for the work that you do in this world.
Thank you, my friend. I really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you, brother.